Okay, this is Mr. Long, and we're going to talk about significant figures today. And in significant figures, this is really a way to round numbers to a number that's understandable. So a lot of times when you run your numbers through your calculator, then you get this great big huge number. And we want to have a set of series of rules on how to reduce this and round this to the appropriate way in chemistry. So we have rules for significant figures. And the first rule is all non-zero numbers are significant. And that can be, for example, 25. Neither one of those are zeros, so there are two significant figures in 25. We could have 5,289, which will have four significant figures. All these are non-zero numbers. And that's the easiest rule. Rule number 2. Now, we have three kinds of zeros. We have leading zeros, we have captive zeros, and trailing zeros. So first off, we have leading zeros. Those are zeros that are going to be in front, such as these two right here. And they are not going to count. So we only have three significant figures in this number because leading zeros are not significant. Another example is 0.01. These leading zeros are not significant, so we just have one sig fig or significant figure. So that one's pretty easy, the zeros that are in front. Or these two zeros in front, they're not significant, but all these are. So we have 8 sig figs in this number right here, or decimal. Rule number 3. It's an easy rule as well. Captive zeros are significant. What are captive zeros? Those are zeros that are caught between numbers. So if you have 707, this zero has a 7 on each side, or a number on each side, so it's going to count as significant. So in this example, we have 3 sig figs. Another example, 6,002. These two zeros are in between numbers, so they're going to count as well. So we have 4 significant figures. So captive zeros are easy, leading zeros are easy, and all non-zero numbers are easy. There's another one with captive zeros. We got that leading zero, so he doesn't count, but this one does because it has a number on each side. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 significant figures. Now, the next rule, trailing zeros, is a bit more complex. So, trailing zeros, there are two parts to the trailing zeros rule. Now, the trailing zeros are zeros that are behind a number. So, we have those that have no decimal, and they are not significant, such as 68,000. These trailing zeros, there's no decimal anywhere in this number, so they are not significant. So we just have 2 sig figs. 820, trailing zero with no decimal. So that one doesn't count either. So we just have 2 sig figs, the 8 and the 2. Now, if we do have a decimal, trailing zeros with a decimal, that changes things. Those zeros are significant. Examples, we have 0.0540, and these are leading zeros, so they don't count. This trailing zero does count because there is a decimal in this number. So we have 3 sig figs here. Now, 79,400,561.0. We have a trailing zero with a decimal. It does count. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 significant figures. There we go. So look out for that decimal if it's in that number and you have a trailing zero. And one last little rule, number 5. If you have a power of 10 that is involved, that does not count. So if you have 8.64 times 10 to the second power, that 10 to the second power doesn't count. So we just have 8.64, and that's 3 significant figures. So don't let that spook you because it doesn't count. Okay, now let's take a look at some examples. And there are some examples on this paper. So let's take a look at this. Then I'm going to ask you to finish filling this out. And I'm going to ask you, a special favor of you guys, not to look up the answers on the internet, not to use the internet key. I want this all from your own brain. So right now, we know that all these are numbers, so there are 4 significant figures here. Here we got leading zeros in front, so they don't count. So we got 2 sig figs here. We have 890. That's a trailing 0, but there's no decimal in it, so we have 2 sig figs there. I'm going to skip down to number 8, 3.4 times 10 to the 4th power. We have 2 sig figs here and none here because we don't count those, so we just have a 2 there. And there's a couple examples that have trailing zeros in there. So on this 0, this is captive. These zeros are captive, and this one's trailing with a decimal, so you know that one counts. Now on number 4, that's captive and it counts, and that's trailing. But there is no decimal in there, so that 0 does not count. So I'm going to ask you to do this rest of this handout, and I want you to pause this, and you can write these down on your notebook paper, and then you can upload those to submit, and that will be fine. So I think I'll stop here for a second and let you guys do that.